Cities are where more and more of us live. Over half the world's population now and over 2/3 by 2050. So if we want to understand risk creation, we need to understand cities. My own local city is Manchester. It's a safe enough place these days, though increasingly overdeveloped and scoring pretty high for urban poverty. Compared with global megacities, it's tiny. Its population less than a third of the 10 million threshold for a megacity. But just as disasters have history, which helps us understand them, so cities do too. Though Manchester's dwarfed by megacities like Tokyo, Delhi and Shanghai, its history reveals a lot about risk creation in growing cities, which gives us insights into the cities of today. But why Manchester? Because it was one of the cities at the heart of the explosive growth of the first industrial revolution, driven by new technology and free market capitalism. What happened to Manchester then can tell us a lot about what's happening to megacities now. That story kicked off around 1760. 80 years later, Manchester's population had grown from 17,000 to 180,000. The skyline was transformed, and by the end of that century, over 1,200 chimneys belched smoke out over the city, carpeting it often in smog. Good news for the industrialists who retreated from the smog to country mansions to count huge profits, as by 1850 the city produced nearly 40% of the world's cotton. Less good though for the workers, adults and children working long hours in unsafe conditions. It took 80 years for the first health and safety legislation to be established and for the first restrictions on child labour. Not only the factories, but the entire city were unhealthy places to live. Life expectancy dropped, respiratory diseases increased, acid rain damaged both buildings and vegetation. Trees in newly established parks had to be taken out of the city periodically to recover. The city grew a lot faster than the efforts to make it safe and healthy. So, imagine a scene in a bleak black iron foundry with workers running to and fro carrying vats of molten iron, smoke and dust filling the air, queuing for meals at the canteen window, sleeping on site 4 to a room. And that's where history teleports us to the present, because while that scene could be typical of 19th century Manchester, I witnessed it in 21st century Shenzhen, one of China's mushrooming industrial centres. The story of Manchester 200 years ago is in many ways the story of global megacities today. Shenzhen has grown from a tiny village to a megacity of nearly 18 million people in just 40 years. Other global megacities are growing at similar rates. Some, like Nairobi, are poor. Others, like Bangkok, are richer. As the cities grow outwards and upwards, there's the growing segregation of the poor into ghettos and slums, while increasing pollution and environmental degradation affect the whole of their populations. An urban freeway in Nairobi was built over the top of the city to free up gridlocked traffic for people who wanted to get to the city's airport, but at the cost of completely bulldozing slums along its path. The city is ringed by slums, some of the biggest in Africa. In Bangkok, roadways are doubled up overhead and air quality from traffic fumes is sometimes so bad people are told to stay indoors. Beyond the slick skyscrapers, 20% of the population of Bangkok live in slums, many along the city's canals. The weight of development means the city's physically sinking over 2 centimetres a year, adding to the flood risk. The same story is repeated in many global megacities, echoing Manchester's Victorian story. Hazards are magnified by urban overdevelopment. Vulnerability is magnified through increasing poverty and segregation of the poor populations. The result is increased risk of disasters, ranging from the everyday disasters of poor health and increased mortality to major disasters such as the floods which struck Bangkok in 2011. These and many other modern megacities, just like Victorian Manchester, allow unmanaged development and growth, yielding private gains for the industries driving them, but generating increasing risk for wider society. Can the cities of today learn from what happened in Manchester? Its story suggests that tackling that risk will take a long time, meaning life will continue to become riskier for the majority of the world's population. Could there be a different future? Many think so. For example, 2 leaders of the 2015 Climate Treaty wrote the book The Future We Choose, showcasing different choices for the future of cities. We'll visit that and other insights about cities from disaster studies in a future video. If you found this video useful in understanding disasters, subscribe to this channel as we explore disaster makers and check out the Disaster Makers book.